And I will bring in Bart, considering it is 9:15 and I want to be punctual. So I just want to say, hi, Bart. What's in the mug?
Earl Grey tea with honey, because John, we're getting over a battle with COVID apparently.
Oh no, that's not good. That's illegal. You can't have that.
I would agree. It felt very illegal.
Yes. So Bart is now here. So Bart will be able to listen to the rant like the rest of us, and we're going to listen together to Caleb Porter because he was mad after the 2-2 draw and talked about two instances. When we come back from the Caleb Porter rant, then we'll talk about the two instances and what you thought about the two instances themselves. Like I said, one has to do with a handball that wasn't called. The other has to do with our new substitution rule in Major League Soccer. So after the match, Caleb Porter was slightly angry about a lot of things. And so here's Caleb Porter feeling he was screwed and let everybody know about it, especially center ref Timothy Ford.
Told the team that we're going to win a lot of games if we play that way. We're very disappointed with the officiating. It's 100% a penalty kick, 100%. I don't know how you look honestly at the screen and decide not to give a penalty. It is a complete joke. It's a travesty. And there needs to be some accountability for that decision because we lost 2 points because of that decision. And we have literally had that same thing happen to us 3 different times where the official's been sent to the monitor and there's a clear penalty and the official doesn't call it. What is happening? It is mind-boggling that he doesn't call that a penalty. We are the only team in the league that hasn't had 1 penalty. What is happening? I've never seen anything like it. For me, all I can say is a complete coward. The referee was a complete coward in that moment. Complete coward. And it's a travesty. He shouldn't officiate. He cost our players 2 points today. 2 really important points. And I'm not going to stand for it. I'm not going to stand for it. I don't care if I get fined. I don't care what Don Garber says. What Don Garber needs to do is look at that situation, look at the official in that situation, and needs to hold this official accountable. And then the second part of the joke show, clown show, was giving us a penalty for not getting out of the game. Luka was coming out of the game because he was injured. But we want guys to literally... He couldn't sprint any faster to get out of the game. He couldn't get out of the game any faster. Initially he walked, yes. But then he sprinted out of the game as fast as he could. The referee told me that it was 14 seconds. 14 seconds it took him to get out of the game. So because he's 4 seconds late, because he can't sprint any faster, they penalize us, and we end up giving away a goal during that penalty. The game isn't meant to be played this way. It's an absolute joke. You're supposed to, as an official, use your discretion in those moments. He did not use his discretion in either of those moments. He missed a clear penalty. If he looks at the monitor and decides that's not a penalty, he should not be an official in this league. He's not competent enough to be an official in this league. If he chooses, in his discretion, to penalize Luca Langoni when he's sprinting for 40 yards to get off the field. He's trying to get off the field. It was 14 seconds. The referees are supposed to use their discretion. He was walking initially because he was injured. This is a joke. And so it's impossible to talk about the game without talking about those two moments from the official.
Joe, did you get an explanation on the possible handball? Did he say what it was or wasn't?
He said that his arm was in a natural position. So I don't know about you guys, but I don't see guys running like this or jumping like this. He handled the ball right here. Everybody in the whole stadium saw the replay. Everybody. if that's not a penalty, if that's not a handball, I don't know what is. But the fact that he actually looked at it and decided that wasn't, he's got no balls. You can't be in this job if you're a coward, if you're not competent. I like Tim as a person. I think he's a good guy. But at the end of the day, this is our livelihood. This is these players' livelihood. We have to have a standard. And even though he's a good guy, he clearly showed today he should not be officiating in the league with those decisions. That's a win. That's a win for us that he took away.
So, hi, Bart.
Good morning.
I thought it would be important to run the entire thing. And I know folks are sitting there going, man, that was long. But yeah, it was. And it was two issues that I wanted to bring up on purpose because I don't like to do sound bites in that situation. I don't like to do that. And so the two elements that Caleb Porter brought up was a handball in the where it looked like it was basically a jump ball. And in this case, and what I'll do is I will post the link to the Blazing Musket articles where they have the screen caps and things like that so folks can see if they didn't see the match itself. Looked like it was a jump ball, and you have a bit of jostling, and as the body goes up, then you have that contact, and it kind of clatters around shoulder to shoulder, then goes away. Then the other element is the 10-second new rule about get your butt up and get off the field, or you're going to play down a man. St. Louis ends up being down a man after it was judged that Luca Langoni did not leave in a timely fashion. You're playing shorthanded. It's basically a power play for St. Louis. St. Louis scores to tie it at 2 with about 20 to go. Caleb Porter's hot. Which one do you want to start with first?
Well, let's start with the substitution because I think this is a little more cut and dry.
Sure.
Look, I think coaches need to realize that referees this year specifically are not going to be playing around because these are the rules they've been given, right? You have 10 seconds to get off the field. You can exit the field at the closest point. You do not have to go from one corner flag to the center line. You can go off the field wherever you feel is the closest point for you. And if you are truly injured, then you need to stay down and get that medical help and then go off the field for that. So I don't really have a whole lot of sympathy in that situation, to be quite honest, because, if the player was truly injured, then he should have come off with medical help, right? Training staff should have been out there, or he could have gone off the closest, exit at the closest point of the field and wouldn't have had this issue. I'm sorry, I just don't have a whole lot of sympathy for that. And I'll be honest, John, going into the next one, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for Caleb Porter, period.
True.
You got hired and paid a decent amount of money to make a team good, and y'all are worse than Atlanta United, which takes a lot of, that's a lot to accomplish in this year.
There you go. All right, so that was point number one, the exit, which created a game-tying goal, and it stayed 2-2. The other incident has to do with adjudicating handballs once again. And in this particular instance, once again, it looked like it was a jousting moment where you have two players going up, one on each side, and you have contact made. And Caleb Porter was of the opinion that in the contact and as the ball is coming down, that it should have been a handball call on St. Louis, and it was not, and therefore Caleb Porter once again was upset. Once again, go over, if you would please, the idea of handball and the allowances that are given center refs when it comes to adjudicating a handball in today's game.
Well, the first thing we're looking at here specifically is, does the ball touch a non-playable part of the body? And it does, right? I think it's very clear that it touches somewhere above the elbow, at least.
It was basically it was right in here, basically, shoulder rotator cup-ish, headed down toward the bicep.
And it definitely touched what I would consider an illegal part of the body, right? Like you're not supposed to be able to touch the ball with that part of your body. But was it deliberate? I don't think it was deliberate. So there's the first thing that we're checking off the list. The ball does not, the hand does not move toward the ball or anything. The hand is, however, outside of the natural silhouette of the body, right? He has made his body bigger by putting his hand up. So I think there is some legitimate question as to why this was not deemed a handball in the penalty area. But we're also looking at, was it a consequence of the wording as justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. And that's where I think we get into the gray area here, John, is the player is jumping at, to seemingly head the ball. We all know that in those situations, your arms are going to come up. You're going to, in some way, shape, or form, be using your arms to get more both height and protection.
Right.
And I think the other thing that's not really talked about in the laws of the game, but that we do talk about a little bit in referee training, is the idea of deflection, or the amount of time you have to react to that. And it wasn't like it was, I don't know, kicked directly into his arm, right?
It wasn't like Kyle Hebert was thinking about it, then
right.
Up. But yeah, it's like it was a natural reaction to try to contest for a ball that was elevated. So Hebert is trying to jump up toward the ball to make contact, and he is second to make contact with it.
So I think there's a legitimate gripe, but I think for him to make this to be some sort of like, the referee should never referee again, I think is a very foolish thing. I mean, I would argue that Caleb Porter doesn't need to be coaching in this league again, because the man hasn't been able to get a team into the playoffs in God knows how many years. So, this is one of those things where I understand the frustration, but this type of reaction is completely, it's just unacceptable from Caleb. I mean, this is not as clear cut as he thinks it is, especially given the fact that it's more of a deflection from, it's not like this was a long kick that was hit into his arm. It was definitely something that was a boom boom play. That said, had this been given a penalty kick, I don't think that Hebert could have been super upset with being penalized for that, because again, to quote the laws of the game, by having their hand/arm in such a position, the player takes a risk of their hand or arm being hit by the ball and being penalized. So yeah, it's a risk. And in this situation, I don't feel like it was worth penalizing, but had he been penalized, I don't think there would have been too much that he could have said that would have saved him. I don't think that it's, I think both instances, I especially the substitution thing, sorry, that's just the rules.
Mm-hmm. Them's the rules is what you're saying.
Them's the rules. And if you are injured, then you need to make that clearer to the referee or something, be like, hey, I can't, leave. But again, you can leave at any point in the field that's whatever closest to you, and then goes get medical attention once you're off the field.
And the rant toward Timothy Ford, while a lot of managers in Major League Soccer and front office folks, I'm sure, have rants about Timothy Ford.
Totally.
Atlanta being one, the Revs being one, because Timothy Ford called 3 first-half penalties against the Revs in a game back in 2022 against NYCFC. Carlos Heel did remember that when he was asked about it, post-match, about just the game in general. But how large, and like we don't really have a base of operations here when it comes to figuring out length of fines and such. But how big a fine do you think, how big an envelope is Caleb Porter going to be getting from the league office in New York? How big a fine do you think he gets? And does he get suspended here? Do you have to make an example of Caleb Porter for the words that he said?
Well, I don't think it's a suspension, but I do think there's a sizable fine. I don't have off the top of my head what a benchmark would be for another coach getting fined for referee comments, but I mean, he'll get fined. It'll probably be a little heftier because of the length and the language used. It wasn't profane, but it was very strong.
Yes.
But, again, the other thing is I would agree that Tim Ford has been part of some very contentious moments in MLS this year, even and in years past. So, he probably is a referee who needs a little bit more coaching and a little bit maybe pay attention more in the pre-season modules, talking about how do we be a little bit more consistent across referees across all matches. But I don't think these two instances are something that is an egregious flaw by his refereeing.
All right, so let's put the reffing down here aside as you sample your Earl Grey. The U.S. national teams, plural, they are active right now. You have some YNT action going on. You have some MNT action going on. Let's start with the good stuff. Alex Morgan yesterday retires. She does so. It was short notice. I mean, I think it was Alex got to post it on. He's like, "Hey guys, look over here." By the way,
yeah.
And so the retirement notice comes out on social media. Turns out more on short notice, 26,000 plus end up at Snapdragon to see her final match. She gets subbed out in the 13th minute. She gets a PK saved. Hey, read the room. Come on, it's her last match. So Alex Morgan leaves in the 13th minute. Very, very cool moment where she takes off her boots and she walks off. When you think of Alex Morgan and her place in American soccer, whether it's national league, what have you, when I mention Alex Morgan, what comes to mind?
Well, I think Alex Morgan as a player has been someone who has just been kind of she has set the standard for what U.S. women's national team players have to be and how they conduct themselves for 12 years now. And I think that kind of ability to say this is where you need to be as a national team player has been integral to the team winning back-to-back World Cups, to during her time, maybe she wasn't part of it, but during her time winning 2 gold medals, winning another medal as well. She has been part of the greatest period of success in U.S. women's national team history. She's also been part of some failures. She was part of that 2011 team that failed to win the only time they've ever lost a World Cup final, losing in penalty kicks to Japan. She was a part of that 2016 Olympic team that crashed out in the first knockout round. But her leadership and her standard of play is the reason why they were able to rebound. You remember in 2011, okay, well, they lose the final to Japan. What do they do in 2012? They win a gold medal. You get knocked out early in the 2016 Olympics. What do they do? Well, 2019, they go win a World Cup. And that was when she was, a mainstay fixture of that team. But just her standard of play has been integral on the field. But then, John, off the field is where I think she has been the most effective. You think about the equal pay fight. You think about some of the sexual and personal harassment issues that NWSL has dealt with. She has been a champion of those women who have come forward with their stories to make sure that other women can be safe in the league. Stories of her going over to Tottenham and basically demanding that they have better playing conditions in Lyon and in Tottenham. Again, she expects a standard of play from herself and everyone around her, and then she expects the people off the field to give them a certain standard of support. And, I think that is something that will continue to live on long after, 8:20, whenever it ended up being, 13th minute of the game last night when she was taken off.
Yep. The U20s Women's World Cup made it to the knockout stage in Colombia with a 7-0 win over Paraguay in the Group C finale. They finished second in the group. Pietra Tordin had a hat trick, and the second place behind defending champ Spain. They get Mexico on Wednesday. will be a match of the 2023 U20 Championship, which Mexico beat the U.S. 2-1 in the final. Only 5 starters from the 23 team are in Colombia, by the way.
Yeah, that Mexico game was a wild one. U.S. completely dominated, and Mexico got 2 lucky goals and somehow won that game in Mexico, mind you. So, they seem to always play these CONCACAF championships in Mexico. It's quite funny. Yeah, it's a good opportunity. I mean, again, I think on the men's side, I usually am a little indifferent about these tournaments. I'm just glad we're there and hope we make it out at the knockouts. But on the women's side, especially this team, there's a lot of professional talent on this team particularly. And despite the fact that Tracy Kevins is still coaching this team for God knows what reasons, I don't know why she hasn't been catapulted into the sun. She's a terrible coach. She continues to just squander talent anytime that she's ever been a part of a coaching staff for this youth program. And I don't know why she's still here. I hope Emma Hayes, that's the first thing that she actually does post-Olympics, is get rid of her. But this team has, I'm sorry, that was a rant that a lot of U.S. women's soccer fans have felt.
Oh, it's all good, brother.
Like, y'all complain about Berhalter. Oof. But this team has a lot of professional talent on it. Like, literally, there's a lot of players who play professionally on this team. And you need to start raising the expectation for these age groups, because just being there isn't good enough. And we need to start taking advantage of these opportunities to build not just team cohesion, but expand the player pool and really build out what needs to be the most robust player pool in the world. I think specifically to Mexico, you better go win. You're a better team than they are. You have been for a long time. And after that, you just try to win the next game. But yeah, these youth tournaments for the women need to start being a little bit more emphasized and winning, because we need to kind of reclaim that top spot. And Spain has dominated the youth ranks for a decade now. There's a reason they're one of the best national teams in the world, but we've got to start performing better in these tournaments to get back to that spot as well.
Men's side, it looks like, and I use the words looks like we're getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to some kind of official announcement with trumpeted fanfare from parapets upon high in Roman castles from the 17th century or something, with the flags draping down as they would always do. Looks like we're getting close to Mauricio Pochettino, because we had an announcement over the weekend. It looks like the staff, the main staff that he traditionally has and has had at all of his stops as far back as folks can remember, will be the staff that he brings in for the national team. So it's like it's going to be Mauricio and his crew coming in here for this when this becomes finally final.
Yeah, I think people forget that that's like a big part of these coaching negotiations as well, as who they can bring in. And if Poch costs a lot of money, his staff is going to cost a lot of money as well. And so again, it's about how do we find that money in the coffers versus,
and your professorships. Yes.
Yeah. How do we sponsor? How do we get those endowments to keep those players, or excuse me, those coaches with him?
Yes.
We did this with Emma. She got a lot of the staff that she normally has had with her throughout her time at Chelsea to come over. Again, there are a lot of things to these coaching negotiations, and one thing people do have to remember about U.S. soccer is it is not one person or one board necessarily making a decision. They're not just full-time all the way there, and they're certainly not in one location. So these things don't just come together. The word is that they're meeting today to approve that, because, they have to, virtually. I'm sure that makes a lot of things a little bit easier, but they're not, those people aren't necessarily employees, if you will, of U.S. soccer. They're not on the clock 9 to 5 for U.S. soccer today. So it is coming together. Hopefully we have an announcement before tomorrow, because by golly, we need a coach in here, John. Someone who is going to hold these players accountable, because they're sure as hell ain't seem to be able to do it themselves.
Yeah, and like I said, this is why I was building to this for the remainder of the segment, or however much longer you want to talk about it, up to the top of the hour, because I think
Can we talk about Alex Morgan again? I mean, goodness gracious.
I mean, yeah. Well, I think we're going to be able to have our guest coming up at the top of the next hour. So if technology works, it's going to be very, very cool. I'm just going to go ahead and ask it this way: what in the blue hell happened in this matchup against Canada, where apparently now, if the numbers are correct, it's the first home defeat to Canada in 67 years. Years, man. What happened here?
Well, I think we need to look at this on a couple of things. One, Canada cared a lot about this game, as they're going to care about every game because that's how Jesse Marsh coaches, right? He's going to be everything's geared up for everything, and that's great. That can take you far, but it can also fizzle out really quickly. So good for him. They're still in the honeymoon stage of his coaching. They did finally figure out how to score goals, which was a struggle for their first 5 matches. On the flip side, the U.S. played terribly. No starter seemed to want to grasp the moment of an opportunity to prove themselves without a head coach. That there were guys on this field who had opportunities to really make their case to the incoming coach, whoever that might be, even if it's not Poach. It could have been Mikey. I mean,
hey, there you go. There's your rant. There it is. Explicit rating 36 minutes in. Attaboy.
No one seemed poised to want to make a name for themselves or show out in a good way. And there were definitely some players on this field who had chances to do that. I think Malik Tillman looked the best out of those kind of not on the bubble players, but those players who needed to prove that they belong. I will be honest, I'm very disappointed Caleb Wiley wasn't in this game because Christopher Lund provided very little of any sort of positivity on the field.
Right.
And Johnny Cardoso was a major disappointment. You just have to call it like it is. I mean, we've been wanting to see him for the U.S. national team. He's performed well in Brazil, performed very well, relatively going over to Spain. And the reason we're stumped. Why can't he play better with the U.S. men's national team? Is it just because he's in a single pivot versus a double pivot? That shouldn't be the reason. You still had Yunus Musa dropping very deep. I mean, they were basically playing a double pivot. There was a lack of desire from this men's national team that has been here, and I'm sorry to go back to him, but it's been here since the second era of Greg Berhalter taking over.
Right.
And for some reason, some sort of malaise and complacency has crept into the system, crept into this program, and the guys do not feel like they need to actually improve upon what they did in 2022. And that's really, really frustrating. And at this point, you do have to question the players and their leadership because, I'll call him out, Christian Pulisic. He's just not that type of leader. Right? That's not who he is. He's I'm going to do it by how I play. And he didn't play poorly by any stretch. But, you were missing Tyler Adams. You were missing Weston McKennie. You were missing Jedi Robinson, guys who have been kind of those types of more vocal, vibes-based leaders. And, Tim Ream has said it. There are guys who aren't taking it seriously enough for, playing for the national team. At the same time, Tim Ream had a terrible game. So, how much of that do you take into consideration? Again, we're trotting out Tim Ream despite the fact that all signs are saying we need to start moving on. So some of this is on Mikey. There's a reason he hasn't succeeded anywhere he's been, to be quite honest, as a head coach. Outside of a good, CONCACAF U20 run, hasn't really had a lot of success as a head coach. So, there's that. It was frustrating. They couldn't pass to each other. Part of that is because, again, this system that they continue to play, and Mikey's system is very different, not very different from Berhalter's, if there is any difference. Continues to be slow, continues to not demand players move into open space even to receive a pass. I mean, that first goal was because Patrick Schulte felt like 10 minutes trying to find anyone who is moving into an open space. So he has to go short to Tim Ream, which invites the whole Canada team to do the one thing they want to do, which is press. And Johnny makes a really bad decision on a pass. He had plenty of time. He didn't have to do that. But when you're under pressure like that, you're going to make bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Red Bull way. And you give up a goal.
Right.
And then conversely, they defended with heart. They defended with determination. And that kept you off the board for the most of the game, as well as just flat out fizzling out attacks when you didn't need to, because again, we don't have enough support in the box, which is a common theme under Greg Berhalter and is continuing under Mikey Virus because he's not a real head coach.
Mm-hmm. The way that it laid out, Jesse Marsh after the match, it was very, very intriguing. And so hang on just a second. Let me get to the quote. I'd rather coach our team right now, 100%, no questions asked. Marsh said after the win, you can see the mentality's been developed. You can see the way this team plays. You can see how much they love playing for the national team, willing to put their careers and lives and the way they play on the line to be the best they can be for each other and for the team. That's all you can ask for as a coach. Bart, guess what? I'm going to put a bookmark in this because our guest is early. And I'm hoping that I didn't scare Bart away. Because we were really getting into the discussion about the U.S. men's national team. And Luka called in early. So Luka called in early at 10, a quarter to 10. He wasn't supposed to call in until 10 o'clock, but he got in the hotel room. And at 10:30 our time, 5:30 local, they've got to do their match day -1 press conference stuff with Moldova. So here just to recap before Bart comes back on, and Bart knows he's coming. So literally after they won and beat Liechtenstein, I reached out and I was like, okay, can we have some kind of a presence on the show, all that. So Luka emails me back and he's like, yeah, we'll be in Moldova. I've got this window of like 5 to 5:30 local time on Monday. And I'm like, okay. And like I said, and that was what triggered making sure that Bart could be on and he could be on early. And then, of course, Luka hit all of his marks early and got all the green lights and came in at a quarter till. And so thanks to Bart for putting the rest of the segment on hold. But, yeah, so that was Luca Pelliccioni. He's the press officer for the San Marino national team for soccer. And he dialed in from a hotel room in Moldova. Fantastic. Oh, brother. All right. So that was hour number 1. And that was hilarious. It was fantastic and hilarious all at the same time. We need to figure out a way to get San Marino's national team over here for a friendly. That's what we got to figure out. So that's the latest out of San Marino. And like I said, I just wanted to see if we could find someone that could put a voice to what happened. When you have a winless streak of 20 years and you have a win at home from someone who was 19 years old and wasn't even alive when the streak started, to get that interview is fantastic. But no, I give full props to Luka for that. And that was absolutely wild. But that's the beauty of the morning show that we have occasionally. And like I said, I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know if Luka was going to make it in time. I had him scheduled for 10 o'clock when they were getting into the hotel, but he got into the hotel early, got into the hotel a half hour early, and punched all of his green lights. And here we go. Okay, so here's segment number 2 with Bart. Hi, Bart.
Good morning again. Good morning, Will. Good morning, Scott. Good morning, Abby.
Oh, man. But no, like I said, Luca Pelliccioni is the press officer for the San Marino national team. And like I said, I didn't know if it was going to work, and it worked. And so we had a conversation with Moldova, man.
It is celebration time out in San Marino in the middle of Italy.
Oh, it was fantastic. Okay, so you were yelling about the second goal.
I don't know if I was yelling. I was
you're still
sternly communicating.
Okay, then you were sternly communicating about the defensive lapses that were happening with the United States and their loss to Canada.
Yeah, I think the frustrating part, and I forget who said it in the chat, but Tim Ream, look, you have been great for your country. You've been a great club player for a long time, but I think this is where you do have to fault Mikey Vares for being a little too afraid to shake things up. I mean, the mission to me should be we need to start turning the page, right? And you kind of even had leeway to do that with the fact that Jedi was out, McKinney was out, Adams is out. And most of those for obviously Adams actually hurt, but we allowed the I kind of don't really want to fly over to the States right now excuse to be, which it should be. I mean, I think we've talked about this particular window being superfluous at best and unnecessary probably in reality, and not very well placed on the calendar. FIFA is talking about, if not removing that, moving it back into the month as well, because you're going to get players who are a little not quite ready. But yeah, I think that you need to start rewarding and punishing players for performances on the field. And I think this is something that the Berhalter coaching tree values so highly.
Mm-hmm.
Training sessions and doing drills correctly and doing the instruction part correctly, that they don't seem to value the actual on-field performance and production. And that's something that's been very frustrating, as and it's led to Berhalter holding on to players for way too long.
Right.
It's led to players getting complacent in their roles on the team. And Tim Ream is a perfect example of, there's no reason why he can't be in this camp. I mean, he's a domestic-based center back. He's pretty experienced. Why not? But why does he need to be the locked-in starter? Right? And if it's just because he does the drills better, well, yeah, he's 30 dadgum 7 years old. He better be doing the drills well at this point in his life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I think the mentality needs to start shifting. And I do blame Mikey Vares for not seeing the opportunity to start a guy like Trusty or McKenzie, who, if they screw up, then we learn something. And that's just where, again, these friendlies need to be learning exercises. We didn't learn anything from Tim Ream screwing up a bunch, other than he's probably not fit for international play anymore. But then you didn't necessarily bring in someone to, sub him off and say, okay, well, here's your shot. Christopher Lund had a average day. This was the perfect opportunity for Caleb Wiley to get some playing time and say, hey, look, we're struggling right now. Let's see if you can go make something happen. You saw Aiden Morris take advantage of that opportunity. Finally looking good in the red, white, and blue. He's struggled on the international stage. Juxtaposing that to, Johnny Cardoso being a very poor performance. Those were good to see. We still haven't seen Josh Sargent play for the U.S. national team, I think, since 2022, which is continuing to be a concerning trend for him. Gio obviously got hurt this camp because, the law of Gio Reyna is he can't be healthy for more than a week. And, that was a problem. That was just, frustrating, is that it's one thing if you're bad, right? Because you put out a bunch of new players, or because you're trying something new, or because, hey, you know what, guys, the point of this friendly is for all of us to go play together and get some new guys some time on the field. If that was your stated goal, because we know the Berhalter coaching tree loves goals and metrics that have nothing to do with actually winning, then that's fine. But that wasn't what was presented here. And you put out it wasn't like you experimented much with your lineup, right? I mean, everyone who played was like, well, of course you're going to play, because for some reason Brendan Aronson is seen as a better soccer player than Haji Wright because he, I don't know, moves his feet quicker, even though he doesn't really do anything with that. Joe Scally is the obvious right back up to Sergino Dest. I don't think it was bad, but, just one of those things where it wasn't like you did anything to go, well, look, I'm the substitute teacher, so who cares? It almost felt like he took the Berhalter, Greg Berhalter left a little folder with the instruction plan, the lesson plan for the day. For some reason, the dude is fired. Who gives a crap?
You were close.
Do something different. And he didn't. He got too scared And so I do blame Mikey a lot for this, even though he was, hot and said, "Oh, it's on the players." Well, it's also on you, man. You have to set that standard, because we've heard this from Berhalter as well and from players is, "Oh, well, it's an intense training session." Well, then why doesn't that transfer to the playing to playing in the game? If you're going hard and intense in training, why is that not translating to game? So it's leading me to believe that there's not really the intensity that they think there is in training. And they're just saying it is.
Then you end up with the ratings, which you pretty much have skewered here when it comes to everything. The oh, by the way goal in the most dangerous league in soccer came from Luca Della Torre. An LDT scored with about 25 to go. And once again, you look at too little, too late. Mikey Veras, after the match, said, "I love those guys, but the mentality to fight and run and to sacrifice, I can't do that for them. That's on them. It's a combination between me and them, all of us together," end quote, from our friends at Agence France Presse.
And it wasn't there. I mean, you look at the ratings, and no one did well except for Patrick Schulte, who I think does need to get a shout out. I think people were unfairly criticizing him for that first goal. Maybe he should have done better, but Schulte was the only player who, in my opinion, played well this game.
Looking at our ratings, of course, from our friends at Soccer America, Schulte pulled a 7, Chris Richards a 3, Tim Ream a 2, Christopher Lund a 4, along with Joe Scally. Midfield, Yunus Musa a 3, Malik Tillman a 3, Johnny a 2. Forwards, Brendan Aronson a 3, Falarin Balogun and Christian Pulisic got 4s. Subs, Aiden Morris a 5, LDT a 6, obviously with the goal. Haji Wright a 3, Cade Cowell a 4, and Pepe an incomplete, obviously, with the number of minutes that he did not play in the match.
A very gracious rating for Cade Cowell.
And next up, the U.S. gets New Zealand at TQL on Tuesday, 7 o'clock Eastern kick. With this one, when it comes to this particular matchup against New Zealand, I mean, obviously, you've got to do a make good in here somewhere and be out for blood, yeah, at least figuratively. Put up.
I don't know if that's the Greg Berhalter mentality that's being transferred through Mikey Barras.
Okay,
that's where we're at. I mean, responses would be great, but we haven't seen this team respond to adversity, really. Sure, they tied Brazil, a not very good Brazil team, after getting smacked by Colombia, but it's not like they magically flipped a switch and we're like, "Oh, this is how we play soccer again." So, you have to have a better response. New Zealand is a much worse team than Canada. So anything short of a multi-goal win is going to reflect badly on everyone involved. I don't care who the coach is. And that's kind of what bothers me about this Canada game is I don't care who the coach is. The lineup we had and the players we have are better than the Canadian players. David, Laren, and Davies are very good players, right? But we have players who should be able to match up with them. And we have better overall quality, and that did not show. And so that's where the frustrating part is, who's going to start showing their actual good quality? Because right now, not even Christian Pulisic is showing their good quality. And, again, you can tell me that you need to do this and that, but until you actually do it, it's just empty words.
Okay. So we're heading to this match on Tuesday, and we'll see where it lays out. There is a previous Soccer for US POD episode that is out. What are the next plans for a future Soccer for US?
The goal is to record on Wednesday.
Okay.
Afternoon, I'm flying to Pittsburgh for a certain football game this weekend.
Backyard brawl.
Backyard brawl. So we better get it recorded by Wednesday so I can edit and send it out to you, John. So that is the plan. Hopefully, we're talking about Pochettino more in this episode and not as much about the actual play on the field, because at that point, it won't matter, right? If you hire Pochettino and you announce him before Tuesday or even on Tuesday, the performances don't really matter all that much because you can start talking about a new coach and not why this team can't seem to play better than the sum of its parts after 6 years, 7 years of trying to do that.
All right. So before you go, I am looking at the schedule and I am checking the get-in price as a subtle plug to our college football show that we have over on the OSG Sports side of things, where we look at football on a budget. And by the way, this is not football on a budget. If you are looking to go into this particular game at Acrisure in Pittsburgh, right now West Virginia 2.5-point favorite. The total 60.5. 3:30 kick on ESPN2. Get-in price at the former Heinz Field is a low get-in price of $72.
Yeah. Well, this is what happens when a team that actually cares about football, college football, plays in Acrisure. You're going to actually have ticket prices that are at market value.
Oh boy.
I mean, look, that stadium's going to be full, packed to capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Last time we played there, it was the largest crowd for a football game ever in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because of the Pitt fans. I'll just tell you that right now.
So we will be looking forward to the next go round of the Soccer for USPOD, hopefully coming up before your departure. Otherwise, you're cutting it in the Pittsburgh airport, and we'll see what happens.
I'm not bringing a laptop with me on this trip. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
we are cutting ties. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so 3:30 kick Saturday afternoon. Once again, thanks for dropping by in part 1 and part 2, considering our guest from Central Europe that came by this morning.
Well, thanks, John, for having me. Everyone, stay safe, stay healthy.
Yes, stay healthy, and continue drinking the Earl Grey, my friend.